We hope you enjoyed this teaching from Christ Church Birmingham. More teaching can be found at www.christchurchbirmingham.org.
Brilliant. Well, it is exciting today, and someone's already mentioned actually in October we're going to be partnering with our Regions Beyond churches across the world to take an offering to support the mission that God's called us to. And in October we're going to be preaching each Sunday through some of our foundations of Regions Beyond and some of our vision. And then of course Christmas is coming. Can you believe it? Having not slept much last night in the heat, Christmas is coming. And of course, at Christmas we have lots of great guest services, so we're going to be focusing on Christmas. So that leaves in between 7 Sundays to have a preaching series, which was quite helpful. And we thought actually it's really good to again just come back to consider who Jesus is, the person of Jesus Christ, because actually it's him that we want to give our focus and attention to all the time. And in our preaching each week, hopefully we're always coming back to the person of Jesus. We're always wanting to point people to him, because we're called Christ Church because Jesus Christ is central to the Christian faith and is central to our lives. And we live in an amazing city, an amazing diverse city, which is such a privilege to be a part of. And that brings us such joy, doesn't it, with different cultures, with different faiths, with different beliefs. But there's also a challenge in that. And with the additional mix of all the different faiths or non-faith or atheism or all the politics that goes on in the city, I think as Christians, more and more we need to be confident in who we are as Christians and confident in the person of Jesus Christ. Because actually, Jesus, he is the answer to all the questions of life and all philosophies. And so who is Jesus is a question that we need to encourage people to consider. It's the most important question. Who is Jesus? Who is Jesus for this city? Who is it for our friends? And that question was asked by one of Jesus' closest followers. Jesus asked his disciples, "Who do people say I am?" Then he asked them a direct question. "Who do you say I am?" And then as we look back on that encounter with his disciples, we soon realize, just as it was wise for them to answer that very important personal question, we also have to do the same. And it was the disciple Peter who seized upon that question and blurted out the answer. And he says this: "You are the Christ, Son of the living God." And in the Gospel of John, we really get to understand who Jesus is. And there's 7 statements that happen of Jesus saying of who he is. He states who he is. He says, I am. I am. I am 7 times. So we've got 7 weeks. So in the 7 weeks, as we preach on the Regions Beyond Foundations every after Christmas, we're going to be looking at the 7 I am statements of Jesus. See, centuries earlier, we read in the Old Testament. The Old Testament is the part before Jesus that tells the story of God's people, the Jewish nation. And we read in the Old Testament that God revealed himself to a man called Moses with this important statement. He said, I am, Exodus 3:14. And others added to this name, I am. And I am translated Yahweh or Jehovah or Lord, by giving him names that explained his character based upon his provision and his miracles. And the Old Testament declares God names as names like Jehovah Jireh, the Lord my provider. Jehovah Rapha, the Lord heals. Jehovah Nissi, the Lord my banner. Jehovah Shalom, the Lord our peace. Jehovah Ra, the Lord my shepherd, and others. Then later, Jesus uses the same name, I am, in the Gospel of John to describe himself. He says to a woman at a well, a woman who had bad reputation, he said, I am he. When his disciples were frightened, and as he walked Jesus on the surface of the water towards the boat they were in, he said, it is I. And then he confirmed to his followers in John 13:9. He says, I am he. See, Jesus is God. John 8, verse 12, it says this, and this is the verse we're going to be thinking about today. It says, when Jesus spoke again to the people, he said this, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. So this morning we're going to look at what it is for Jesus to be the light of the world. Some of you won't know, but I actually have got 3 brothers and 1 sister. But growing up, my parents often fostered children as well, so there'd often be at least an extra 3 children in our household. And so that meant in my early years, I often had to share a bedroom with a sibling. Who ever shared a bedroom with a sibling? Hands up if it was always joyful. Oh. Now you boys, the cooks, are moving to a new home. You're going to have your own bedrooms. Yippee! Was it? Yeah. Malachi's going, ah. That was a good impression of I'm going to heaven, just by having my own room. And space and room. And so my parents, though, gradually extended our house. And I was the eldest in my household. So I got to have my own room, which I was so excited about. But it was also weird because, of course, you're used to have somebody in your room at night, aren't you? And it was a fairly large room, but it was weird. It was quite old-fashioned. It had one of those pool lights, you know, like you have in the bathroom to turn on and off the light. And it was just above the bed, which was very helpful, actually, because there was a light above the bed, which meant if I could hear my parents coming up the stairs, I could quickly turn off the light and pretend I was asleep, because I would read until like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, you know, so I would quickly be able to do that. Anyway, one night, I fell fast asleep. And then I woke up suddenly with a noise in my room. And what do you do when you hear a noise in your room? Sort of, you move down the bed a bit more, don't you? Thinking that's going to protect you, you know, or you pull your duvet up. So I kind of, you know how your heart starts, right? I don't know if you've ever had that experience of fear like that. There's somebody in the room. And my heart was racing. My fear levels increased as I considered what I should do. Should I scream out for help? It's weird how you never scream out. Of course, in your dreams, you never scream out, do you? Because you can't scream. I was awake, but I certainly didn't feel like screaming out. I literally froze in the bed as I considered, what should I do? So I decided to sort of try and peek my eyes open just a little bit. Not enough that they would know that I knew that they were in the room or I was awake. However, I couldn't make out if there was anybody standing there. So then my plan of action, what I've got to do is just quickly run out the room as fast as possible, get out of bed, run, and somehow get away from whatever's going on. So I carefully thought, well, what am I going to do? So I gradually moved my arm to remove the covers. And then, internally, I screamed as I felt an arm at the side of my bed. And I didn't scream, I just screamed inside. And it was like, not only is this person in my room, they're now by the side of the bed. In fact, they're probably hiding under my bed. You know how seconds feel like it's into minutes, into hours? And I was absolutely in fear. The burglar was hiding under my bed. And he now knew because I'd touched him. So I thought, all I can do is just turn the light on now and run. So I lifted up, reached the cord, and light flooded into the room. And I looked down to see the intruder. But what I saw was just my arm. I'd been sleeping on it. It had gone dead, and it was totally cold. And there was no blood in it. So I just shook my arm. It was my own arm. The blood poured back into my veins. My heart began to calm down. And I realized the whole thing was in my imagination, embellished by a dead arm that I'd been sleeping on. See, the light, as I put it on, dispelled the fear, dispelled the darkness, fear went, my heart slowed down. Jesus said, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. See, what would we do without light? See, in the beginning, God created the sun to give us light by day and the moon to give us light by night. Light was considered by our Creator to be essential for our well-being. We know that, don't we? Especially living in England, particularly if you come from another nation or come from the south like I have. You know, vitamin D is really important. Do you know how do you get vitamin D? Does anybody know? Where do you get it from? Sun. So if you don't have enough sun, you get a vitamin D deficiency, which is what I have. So anytime the sun comes out, I'm out there. Give me some sun. Although then yesterday I thought, I'll give me some sun. I went out and was like, forget it. I'm going back inside again. But we need light to even exist. You know, of course we need light when we want to read a book, don't we, at night? Or when we drive a car, we need the headlights. When we go to work in the factory or whatever. Light, most of us, it's a luxury we couldn't do without. And of course we've come a long way from what light meant in the old days. Can you remember all the films, the medieval, the torches made of rush or reeds and animal fat as they lighted the way, to wicker lamps, to candlelight, to Edison's light bulb. And of course today, the need for better and brighter light is all around us. Spotlights, neon lights. We love fireworks, don't we, that light up the night. The joy of being in the city, being multicultural, is we have fireworks all the time, and I'm sure you love them at night, don't you? All those lovely weddings. 12 midnight, we have fireworks all the time, Simon. Celebrations. And then, of course, light is important. And in the time of Jesus, light was just as important, but of course harder to produce. They couldn't just switch on a switch. And as Jesus is saying who he is, he says he's the light of the world. The time he's saying it, at that time, in Jerusalem where Jesus was, the Jewish people were gathering for a festival. It was an annual celebration. It was called the Festival of Tabernacles, which was highlighted with a display of light. See, thousands had come to Jerusalem to commemorate, to remember the living of God's people in tents during their journeys in the wilderness. Some of you might not know the story, some of you won't know the story, is that God's people were held in slavery in Egypt, and finally Pharaoh let them go. And they were going to go to the promised land. But because of their rebellion and mistakes, it took them 40 years to get where God wanted them to be. And in the meantime, they had to have a massive camp. Can you imagine camping for 40 years? I can't camp for 4 days. 4 hours is too much. But they were camping all the time. But in that camping, God still provided for them. And he led them. And he led them by a pillar of cloud and a pillar of fire at night. He led them where they were to go. He always provided for them. And so these people come again in this Jewish celebration and they camp outside on the roofs, in their tents, their booths, to recall and remember how God had delivered them. And then on the evening of the first day of the festival, there is a ceremony called the illumination of the temple. And what would happen, it would take place in one of the courtyards within the temple that was there in Jerusalem. And the court was surrounded with galleries like bleachers, a bit like at the theatre. And they were erected to accommodate all the spectators. And in the centre of the court, there are 4 great candelabras, massive stands were prepared. And when darkness came, the 4 great candelabras were lit. And according to the historian of the day, the gigantic candelabra sent out such a blaze of light throughout Jerusalem that the entire city surrounding the temple was lit up. So somebody just give me some water, please. So this city was lit with the light that came from this ceremony. Now today we might get together at New Year's Eve for a 30-minute show of fireworks But the festival of lights in Jesus' day, thank you, Brian, lasted throughout the night. All night long, the religious leaders of Jerusalem danced before the Lord. They sang psalms of joy and praise to God, while the people watched from the galleries, clapped their hands in rhythm, and with tambourines. So it was a real celebration of light and what God had done. Now, here comes Jesus. Against the backdrop of that tradition, Jesus spoke to those who were listening using this picture of light that they were familiar with. They had seen it. They understood it. What he said is this, in effect. You've seen the blaze of the temple piercing the darkness of the night. I am the light of the world. And for the person who follows me, there will be light. Not just for one night, not just once a year, but for the person who follows me for the entire journey of life, there will be light. The light in the temple is a brilliant light, but in the end it will flicker, it will die. Jesus is saying, I am the light, which lasts forever and ever. And then he went to say, anyone who follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. See, Jesus was telling his disciples, and he's telling us here today, those who put their trust in Jesus, that he will continue to be the light that's come into the world. And as we come to know Jesus, we understand that light. Darkness goes. The Bible says when we step into faith, when we turn our backs on the old way of living and we decide to turn to Jesus and we receive the forgiveness that he offers because what he did on the cross for us. Because ultimately, Jesus died on the cross for our wrongdoing. He took our pain, our suffering, our wrongdoing, our sin upon himself. And as he died, he took the punishment for our sin. He took the darkness of our lives, the darkness of the world upon himself. And therefore, when we receive the light of Jesus, when we say we're going to follow him, when we ask him forgiveness, this light pierces the darkness. The Bible said we were once in darkness, but now we are in light. See, this morning, you might have been to church before. It might be your first time or second time. Maybe you've heard about Jesus. Maybe you think, oh, I quite like Jesus. It's okay. I've been to church before. What you've got to understand is this. You're either in darkness or you're in light. And God wants to just gently come to you and says, I want you to come into the light, even this morning, to receive this forgiveness that he offers, to know him in a personal way. See, Jesus being the light of the world means the world has no other light. If there's going to be a light for the world, it will be Jesus. It is Jesus or darkness. There's no third alternative. There's no other light. It means, therefore, that all the world, everyone in it, needs Jesus as their light. It means that this world was made for this light. This light is the owner of the world. And when his light comes, it not only makes sin plain, as foreign and ugly, but makes everything good in the world shine with its full and true beauty. This world was made to be illuminated by his light. And Birmingham needs to see and experience the light of Jesus. How is this going to happen? Matthew 5:14-16 says this. He says this. He says, therefore, you, turn to your neighbour and say you, point at them. It's a bit rude in some cultures, so pat them on the back and say you. You are the light of the world. A town, sorry, you have to repeat the rest of it. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on a stand and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. See, all of us who know Jesus are called to shine with the light that Jesus has given us. individually and together, we don't hide this faith. Instead, we serve God as a beacon of hope amid darkness. Like a town on a hill can be seen far away, we are called to be that light for others to be seen. See, God takes an ordinary person and uses us to share his message to people who need him. See, when we share about him, we bring that light to others. We were saved from sin to shine. We were called to shine. Don't hide your story of God's love and grace. We don't need to be ashamed to talk of him in our workplace, our college, our university, our neighborhood. To offer to pray for people, to let others know that we've experienced this love of God and to extend it to others. And Jesus talked about the strength of collective light. See, each house in the city with its lights cast a glow across the sky. And as Christians, we come together and there's a glow for God that can't just be done individually, but collectively. We shine brightest when we shine together. And it shines as we serve our communities. As we let our good deeds come, they will glorify our Father in heaven. And we need cities set on hills across Birmingham and beyond. You know, it was so wonderful again. We had that food pantry. It was on Friday this week. Just again, many opportunities to share the love of God with people, demonstrated by giving them food, but also praying for people, telling them about Jesus, inviting them to come here on a Sunday, talking to them about the Alpha course. It's so wonderful to be able to do that. You know, that's why it's so important for us to be together, to do things together. But also with what God's doing across the city, it was wonderful to be with churches from North Birmingham yesterday, praying with them, having coffee. That's why Brian and Sarah this afternoon with Tam are going to be over in East Birmingham, praying, worshipping with other churches from the east, because we want to see a light shine brightly in the east of Birmingham. As our South gathering in Maple gather this morning, they are praying for that community, those communities. They're praying they will shine in their workplaces. As Cole and Raquel and the family get ready to move to Walsall, and as we prepare the building for more and more people, in that we can be a light in the community of Delphs. Bolesall Heath, Moseley need greater light. They need to see the light of Jesus. They won't see the light from South Aston in Moseley because it's too far. But what they will see is this community, as Liam and Bethany and Namrata and AJ and the kids are there. They're going to see a light shining as that church grows, as it has impact. We're going to see something happening. That's why we plant churches, so that we will have lights in communities. See, that's why Liam and Bethany, great to have you with us this morning, who are coming to be part of this church. That's why they're willing to move. See, that's why the Jamals didn't settle, but have moved now to that area. As Isaac and Schiffer move to their new schools, have they got into school yet? No, not yet. Pray for them. That's one of our prayers. They're going to be new lights in that classroom. As Liam takes up his new job down in Worcester Way, you're going to be a light in that workplace. As Bethany, you maybe have to get a temporary job for now, you're going to be a light in the coffee shop. And we need those lights. We need that shining because people need to encounter and meet people who are shining with Jesus. As AJ pounds the streets of Moseley as a postman, right now, he is a light. As Naam has play dates with her children, she is a light. And as we believe God for more and more people to join, to grow a church in Moseley, we're believing for a light to shine. We're believing for a city set on a hill. And we're believing as they grow, they're also going to be multiplying what we're doing. They're going to say, where is the next place? Because when we need a light there. We need to shine. We need the church established and to grow. Why don't we just stand together? See, Jesus says to all of us this. In Matthew 28, verse 19, it says, therefore, go and make disciples of all nations. Shan, would you like to come? Baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I've commanded you. And surely I am with you to the very end of the age. See, we're called to shine because we're called to go. And as we pray for this new church plant in a few minutes, do you know at times it is going to be tough? It's probably tough right now. There will be challenges, there will be provocations. You know, even last week, you know, bless him, Coral goes to the building which we're sorting out ready for our community, and all our sheds have been broken into and stuff's been stolen. Now you might say that's typical, because those things do happen. Of course they do, they happen everywhere. But it's because light is coming into the darkness. And the darkness doesn't like the light. But the darkness will not overcome the light. Jesus is the light of the world. We are the light. He calls us to go. And in that promise to go, he says, I am with you. Psalm 27 verse 1 says this. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? Who's sometimes fearful about being a light in your workplace? Making a mistake, saying the wrong thing? Who sometimes is fearful even about church planting or pioneering, scared that we're even sending more people out? Yeah? The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? Let's say this together. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? Let's say that to ourselves. Let's say it again. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear?